Hello, I'm Matthew, and today I'm going to show you how to make this two-colored sweatshirt out of two normal sweatshirts.
The tools I used was a big cutting mat, fabric scissors, some extra fabric, a ton of needles, a cutting wheel, and this big ruler. So the first step is the seam that runs diagonally through the sweatshirt, where you're going to be cutting the original ones in half, just along that line. Now this is the wrong sweatshirt, obviously. I forgot to record the first one, but just stack both sweatshirts on top of each other. Make sure you account for missing the pocket there. And you're going to draw a line that goes from the top of one shoulder all the way down to right above that pocket. And make sure when you get down to the bottom or towards the edge of the sweatshirt on the side there, I did a little curve just to make sure I didn't get too low on the sweatshirt. Now that you've got the line drawn, you're going to take the cutting wheel. I started at the top of the sweatshirt and just cut the way down through both sweatshirts at one time because I had them both stacked on top of each other. I don't here because this is just an example, like I said. But yeah, you can cut through both sweatshirts at one time, get all the way down to the bottom. Make sure you cut through both of them on the first cut. Now the next step on the sweatshirt is sewing the two halves together to get this inner seam right here. Now I started by sticking needles in it to keep it aligned throughout the whole sweatshirt so it doesn't bunch up in any areas. And the way you do this is by grabbing on the seam on each side. So I grabbed the seam up on the shoulder on both sweatshirts and where the seam would be on the side of the sweatshirt on the opposite side. You kind of flap it around, find the middle or the natural middle without pulling or tugging the sweatshirts at all, and put a needle in that. You're going to repeat this process until you have a bunch of needles throughout the whole thing so that there are less buildups and less puckers in the sweatshirt when you sew it together. So you can see I'm going to flap it out again and stick a needle right in the sweatshirt where it naturally lies. Make sure you get the needles all around the entire sweatshirt before you get on the next step of sewing too. Be patient with this because this can be frustrating, and it took me a few tries actually. I went through once because I had a big buildup of fabric on one side of the sweatshirt. I had to take all the needles back out and restart. Now that you've got all the needles set in, I started up on the shoulder seam of the sweatshirt. And I started with a straight stitch that I went all the way around the sweatshirt. Make sure you stick the needle in to lock it. You're going to go forward and back just about 1/4 inch to lock in the stitch. And like I said, make sure you take this slow. Don't force the sweatshirt, but kind of encourage it to get the stitch where you want it. And you want the stitch about 1/4 inch in from the edge of the sweatshirt. I started here with a straight stitch, and I went all the way around the sweatshirt one time with the straight stitch, locking it in again when I got back to the start seam on the shoulder. And once you finish that straight seam all the way around, I switched to a zigzag stitch, and you want to go all the way around the sweatshirt again, starting at the shoulder seam. Make sure you try and get the left side of the zigzag stitch right on the straight stitch that you had earlier. Now, once you got both halves of the sweatshirt put together, we're going to work on the drawstrings. To start this, pull the drawstrings out as far as they will go. I put a couple clips on the end of the drawstrings there so that when you cut them off, they won't get sucked back into the sweatshirt. And I probably could have cut mine a little further, but I cut them at 2 inches, so oh well. Make sure when you do this, be careful not to mess with the drawstrings too much because they will start to fray. And it probably would have been a good idea for me to try and seal them in some sort of way, maybe with tape, before I cut them so that the fray would be less, but whatever, I didn't do that. Just do the same thing for both sweatshirts. Pull the drawstring, stick the clips on, and make sure you cut the drawstring at about the same length. So I did 2 inches on the blue sweatshirt, I'll do 2 inches on the purple sweatshirt. Okay, now once you have those, this part is a little tricky. You're going to stick one drawstring on top of the other that you have in the sweatshirt already. And what I did is I started just both of them laying right on top of each other, and you're going to lock it in with a straight stitch just so that it's not going to move and it's not going to fray as much the more you handle it. Now that the 2 drawstrings are locked together, I used a little piece of extra square fabric that I had. Doesn't matter what color this is, doesn't matter what it looks like, just make sure it's pretty thin and then it can get sucked back into the sweatshirt once you've got the drawstrings sewn together. So I put a little needle in the side of mine there so that the fabric will stay in place. Once again here, I started with a straight stitch right in the middle of the fabric to lock the 2 drawstrings together. And I went forward and back just to lock that stitch in. After that first stitch is locked in on the drawstrings with the fabric, I switched it to a zigzag stitch just to lock it in a little further and kind of tighten it around the drawstring.
Well, thank you for watching. Hopefully your sweatshirt turned out really cool looking and that you like it. Go ahead and give the video a like if you liked it and subscribe to my channel for more videos to come.